Cheers, man. It's good to be back.
Good to be back. Been a hell of a week. So,
Got some crazy stuff over the skies.
we got some crazy stuff going on in the state of Alaska last night. Throw it up on the big screen.
We there?
We're there.
All right, let's take a look at it. Let's see what's going on.
What is that?
We'll see.
Whether you're a long-time viewer or just
You gotta be kidding me. Way to screw it up, Alaska One Source.
We already did the beer.
Yeah, I know, we already did the beer crack.
You're overthinking it. Just
Well, it's not loading now. No.
whether you're a long-time viewer or just finding Alaska's
25 seconds?
just 24 seconds.
Get it to the 22nd.
Come on,
mark
Rebecca
and then
Paul.
pause.
No, we can skip it in just a second, and then it'll actually play
We
the
can
video.
edit it back
Yeah.
together.
I think you're bigger.
What is that? This was over the Alaska skies?
Where the fuck was this? How did I miss this?
Are you wrong?
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about this, dude.
So, this was taken, I believe, in Delta Junction, Alaska today, real early in the morning. Sources are saying it's a SpaceX launch. Zach, you want to delve into a little more detail on that? What do you think that is?
I mean, from an engineering perspective, it's either a wormhole traversing our skies, or it's some man-made object, probably a SpaceX satellite that's spinning, and the exhaust gas is spiraling out with the spin, and then it's being illuminated by, assumably, the power source.
You know what it reminds me of? You remember GoldenEye back in the day?
Yeah.
Staring down the rat ring?
Yeah, where it twists on the barrel.
Yeah. And I guess if that's a rocket, that makes perfect sense to me. Like, it's spinning just like a bullet down a barrel.
Right.
So,
barrel's
pretty
just-
wild though. Sent a lot of people, a lot of conspiracy theories flying around, I'm sure.
Well, cheers to that.
Way cool though. I mean,
Definitely cool.
I didn't get to see it, unfortunately. Did you?
No, I didn't, this is the first time I'm hearing about it.
Yeah, it's wild. I woke up this morning, hopped on Facebook, saw that, and was like, that's not real, that's Photoshop. And then bam, 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 post after post and picture after picture. And I'm like, that's not Photoshop.
Wild.
And I started reading into it, it's people from all over Alaska, like, what is this thing? I guess last month in Hawaii, they also spotted this.
Right. Yeah, I heard about the one in Hawaii, and I know they attributed it to SpaceX.
So it's pretty wild. Like, that's not something you would ever normally see.
I'm not gonna lie. If I saw that in the sky, I would be like, that's aliens.
I'm grabbing my helmet and my gun.
It's my tinfoil hat.
yeah, I need my tinfoil hat. It looks like, space man are coming into invade Earth, or a time traveler coming through.
Which, let's be honest, Elon can't be sure he's not an alien. Have you ever seen that guy talk?
Talk about we'll get into some alien stuff, but I mean, like, yeah, Zuckerberg. You can't convince me that guy's human.
No. So,
Anyway, welcome to Renegade Podcast, brought to you by Wild Grounds Coffee, as always. Let's delve into this thing, man.
yeah, let's just jump right into it.
Let's talk about some weird UFOs, UAPs. Give us a rundown. Zach here is a bit of an expert on the subject. He's spent a lot of time researching, did a few different papers on it. The guy has a wealth of knowledge on this kind of subject. So.
Yeah, I actually did a recent college project on it. So it was a scientific research project. So it got a lot of good data. First off, I'd like to talk about what the U.S. actually has, right? So what do we know that the government has?
It's a good question.
Have you ever heard of Ben Rich?
No,
from Lockheed
never.
Martin?
I've heard of Lockheed Martin.
Right. So Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, it's basically like their secret squirrel, black budget development group.
Right.
Think Area 51, Skunk Works.
Right.
There's witnesses who claim that he said, I think it was in the 1990s, he claimed that if you've seen it in Star Trek, if you've seen it in Star Wars, we've been there, we've done it, or it's not worth doing. He also claimed, oddly enough, that consciousness was the epitome of the research
So you're telling me there's a guy out there somewhere with a lightsaber?
Or it's not worth doing.
I kind of want a lightsaber.
I want a lightsaber too. Go to Disney. They have them. So during my investigation, I found a patent, actually patented by the U.S. Navy, right?
Yeah.
So there's this guy named Salvatore Pais, or Pius, not sure how to say his name. Basically, and this is getting a little conspiratorial, but if you translate his name, it literally translates directly to the savior of our country, right? So this guy, who is a real guy, he went to Case Western University. He's attributed with things like over Unity devices, portable nuclear fusion reactors.
Pretty high tech stuff.
Not only that, but he allegedly designed and got the patent. Not allegedly, he designed and got the patent for a craft that, quote, uses inertial mass reduction device.
Okay, for those of us without engineering degrees, what the hell is that?
So inertia, think about inertia as like this your resistance to movement.
Okay,
right?
I'm there.
So the more inertia, like if I had a ball on top of here, right?
Okay.
I could smack the can and the ball would fall straight down.
Right.
Right. So that's inertia.
Right.
If we can turn that off, if we can turn off, say, the ability of the Higgs field, which is what gives mass. Think about it like an ever-pervasive field that's everywhere. So it's just this thing that exists everywhere, and if it has mass, as you move through it, it acts like molasses, dragging you, slowing you down. So it takes more and more energy to, say, reach the speed of light, to the point where it takes an exponential, infinite amount of energy to get mass to the speed of light, right? So something with mass can never reach the speed of light. It can only get arbitrarily close.
Correct.
So in the CERN colliders, we get, say, two protons going opposite directions, and we get them up to 99.9999% the speed of light. But it can never go the speed of light. It would take all of the energy in the observable universe to get mass up to the speed of light, right? It's something that can't happen. So what Salvador Pais found was that through a certain technology that he created, he can create basically a bubble around a craft, right?
Okay.
And that bubble, it does not interact with the quantum waves, right? So basically you have this negative vacuum pressure bubble that keeps everything inside from interacting with everything outside.
Okay.
So what that means is, have you ever tried to move your hand underwater?
Yeah, there's a resistance there.
Right. And then what happens if you turn your hand sideways and move it through the water?
It's a lot less resistance.
A lot less resistance. Right, so this is that same concept, but moving to no resistance.
Pretty wild.
Not only is it pretty wild, but the implications are mind-blowing. So what this means is, if we can, using what's called coupling, accelerating high-frequency gyration and vibration. So basically, by accelerating the rate that the rate of the quantum vibration and spin through this resonant cavity on the outside of the craft, they can create a force field where basically it's self-contained. So what's inside is causally disconnected from what's outside.
Okay.
Right? So what that means is you can be doing 1,000 miles an hour and instantly change directions. Now, I mean, you work on an aircraft. What would happen if you instantly change directions?
It's not speed that kills. It's suddenly changing directions.
Right. Yeah. You'd become soup inside the
Yeah.
cockpit, right? If you're
Yeah.
doing 1,000 miles an hour and all of a
The
sudden,
G forces alone you would experience an insane amount of G forces.
as you say that, some of the research I found actually, scientific studies in Ukraine found that these crafts were operating in the hundreds of thousands of Gs, right?
That's wild. So, for those of you that don't know what a G is, you want to delve into that real quick?
Right. So a G is acceleration. So that's a standard acceleration due to gravity. That's what we experience here. So the thing that makes that go down is one gravity, one G. It's the gravity of the Earth pulling down on the can, right?
So when you experience a 2 G's you can feel it.
You can feel it. For
So your body, if you've ever been on an airplane and experienced any sort of turbulence, and you go weightless for a second, that's negative G's.
Right.
Positive G's is when you're coming back down out of
Pushed
that,
into this.
and you feel like when you're accelerating really fast in a car, and you feel, oh, I'm getting sucked into the seat.
Or-
That's minor G forces. In
What
an
if they're on a roller
airplane,
coaster? Like when they start going into spirals.
yeah, airplane, roller coaster, anything that accelerates at a high rate of speed in a climb, you're going to experience a lot of G forces.
And to be clear, those are single-digit Gs.
Yeah.
I mean, even the most accomplished fighter pilots, they're pulling maybe 8 or 9 Gs for a fraction of fraction of a
Yeah.
second. Like those are not things that are sustainable. Even to reach, 5 Gs for a normal person is unlikely. As you're moving into a test pilot range, they have to learn to breathe to actually force their blood.
They call it the Hickok maneuver.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're even approaching, say the 10G mark, you're looking at something that could definitely be fatal for a human.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's imagine an egg and you're spinning it. You tie it to the end of a string and you spin it around.
Exactly.
It's gonna scramble that egg.
Right.
That's just how G forces work. I mean, we're not immune to that, but you're telling me there's a possibility we are.
Basically, we can create a bubble around the craft, and no G's experienced. Basically everything, all the G's that should be experienced in that craft, there's nothing. So the way this is described, imagine going 10,000 miles an hour towards Hawaii over the ocean, right? And then you instantly turn 90 degrees and head towards California that fast, right? The material composition of the craft itself should tear apart. We're talking about energy levels that would destroy anything that man has the capability of producing, right?
And just a 45-degree bank on an aircraft is a tremendous amount of stress on that frame.
Right. Unless you're in a little fighter jet where it's...
And the people inside. I mean,
Right.
If you've ever gone on a flight to anywhere, when they're banking in to come into a land, that bank is less than 20 degrees.
Right.
And you feel it. It feels like, oh man, we're getting sideways on this thing. You're not even close to sideways.
Right.
It is minimal. So a 90-degree turn, even the best fighter jets we have can't pull a 90-degree turn.
No.
They can pull, maybe a 60, 70-degree turn. That's probably an exaggeration right there, but like that is an insane level of turning.
Yeah, you can get, with a lot of the higher end stuff, you can get, sort of like 0G rolls and stuff where you basically drop into it and catch yourself. But it's, 100,000
And you're talking
Gs.
zero deceleration in speed.
Right.
So 10,000 miles an hour, make a 90-degree left-hand turn, lose zero speed.
Right.
That's
Or
insane.
gain speed.
Or gain speed.
Right.
That's wild.
So the way this is described, imagine that someone inside the craft just had a little trackball in front of them. You know those old mouses that you could just spin the ball?
Yeah.
Right. So imagine that you have that in front of you, and you sit down, and it feels just like me and you. We have our drink sitting on the table. There's no movement inside the craft, right? But you can just move that trackball, and you're instantly moving a different direction. And you could be heading that direction at arbitrarily high speeds, and instantly just all you have to do is roll the trackball, and you're heading in a different direction at arbitrarily high speeds.
I have
no intermediate inertial.
I have a bit of
changes.
a background in the aviation industry, and there's been fighter pilots and cargo pilots, and all the way back and dating into World War II even, who's the Foo Fighters,
yeah.
and there's not just a band; it's a phenomenon that they saw these orbs of light that were changing directions and moving at extreme rates of speed, stopping instantly, changing direction, moving just impossible movements in it from any sort of aircraft known to man.
Right.
And these are things that you're saying we now possibly have the capability of doing?
If I'm speculating, I think we've had the capability for 80 plus years. But right now, the U.S. holds the patent on it. And
That's pretty telling. That means it's past a concept.
Right.
They've proven the concept.
right. So the ONR, the Office of Naval Research, they're the ones who got the patent, right? And this is where it gets really interesting. So the USPTO, the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, they initially denied the patent, right? Because it wasn't possible.
Right.
So the head of the ONR, I think it was the head of the ONR, contacted the head of the USPTO and warned them that, so it's called by warning of similar, or by threat of similar, right?
Okay.
So what that means is he went on the record telling the USPTO that not only is this possible, but our enemies have this or almost have this. And if we're gonna to get the global patent, which is important for IP protection, with
National security.
right? Well, I mean, really, it comes down to coercing allies to come to us instead of China. But basically, they were like, hey, if we're gonna get this, we need to get it now because China is about to get it if they don't already have it, right? Russia's about to get it if they don't already have it. Now this is where it gets really interesting. It's more likely than not that we all have this. It's my research indicates.
Wow.
So have you ever heard of something called To the Stars Academy?
I have. I don't know a lot about it. I know there's like a couple of, I believe that one of the band members from Blink-182 is in that.
Yep. So I'm gonna see.
What?
Oh no, he was the founding member.
Yeah.
So-
Was it Tom DeLonge?
Tom DeLonge.
Tom DeLonge.
Yeah.
He is super into like aliens and space travel, and it's a real thing.
So Tom DeLonge of Blink-182 actually quit the band in I think 2012 because
And
he
they
was
just brought him back.
yeah.
It was just on TV.
Right, and that's part of the program. So I think it was 2012. He branched out on his own. He left the band, and he decided he was going to become a full-time UFO researcher, and he was going to write books. Basically, he thought he had figured out what was actually going on, as he put it. Right. So he wrote this book, outlining how the Nazis actually created anti-gravity technology. And we've been basically in this shadow war with them ever since.
Is that correct me if I'm wrong, De Glocka?
Yeah.
The bell.
Yeah, exactly.
We could delve into that in a whole another thing about Operation Paperclip and all that kind of stuff. I'm interested in this kind of stuff. I have very little education as far as what makes what work. Aliens, spacecraft, this stuff's always intrigued me, and I think that a lot of people are interested in this kind of thing. And it's crazy to think that it went from science fiction to there's patents on this stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty insane. But so here's the crazier thing. So you take Tom DeLonge, right?
Yeah.
So he was on Rogan, I think in 2016, and it was honestly the only time I've ever watched Rogan where I've been like, dude, what are you doing? Like it was there's something going on here, and he was like laughing at him off camera. And, like he went to the bathroom and he's like calling him crazy, right? But I realized immediately in that moment that either Tom DeLonge is committing felonious fraud or he's telling the truth. Right? There's no in between, because the stuff he was saying.
Facts is oftentimes crazier than fiction.
Well, he was claiming back in 2016 that he basically wrote this book outlining what he thought actually happened, right? What was actually going on with UFOs, and on a whim submitted to the CIA. And he basically said, "Hey, I think there's some serious stuff going on here. I don't want to affect any national security measures. And basically, if I'm right about what's going on, this is a matter of national security, right?"
Yeah.
So he said, "Hey, I want you guys to proofread the book and basically tell me if I need to leave anything out or if I'm, give me some advice on it." His response, I believe he got a phone call the next day after submitting it, basically saying, "How the hell do you know this? Where did you get this information? We need to meet immediately. We've booked you a flight to DC."
And this is a rock star.
This is a rock star.
The truth, the facts are just, you can't make this stuff up. It's so crazy. Like, we go from just nothing known to people. We're talking about, Roswell and all these Operation Paperclip, Blue Book, all these things that they're alluding to the fact that we pulled Nazi scientists out of Germany after the war to work on our space program. And now we're talking about the V2 rocket was the great grandfather of the Apollo space program. So you're saying the Glocka was real and that it was the grandfather of this UAP kind of stuff.
Yeah, I
This
mean that's
advanced
the implications.
propulsion stuff.
Right.
So
Have you heard of the flyovers? I think it was 1952. I might be wrong about that. When they flew over Washington D.C. and they're actually, I mean, there's a series of saucers, of saucers photographed over the White
they
House.
lit up Washington D.C. With spotlights
Yep.
and actually shot at some of these things.
Yep. And then L.A. There was the Battle of L.A.
The Battle of L.A., where they expended, I don't remember how many
Thousands of artillery rounds.
ridiculous amounts of anti-aircraft to shoot at what ultimately was
Doesn't exist.
nothing,
Right.
which is insane to me, because if you're seeing it and I'm seeing it and we're shooting guns at it, it means we believe it's there.
Right. Exactly.
So something was there, but
Right.
you know, if you're shooting at something that can accelerate at a high rate of speed and change directions, what's your odds of hitting it?
So
0?
So with regard to that, I've actually seen and this has been officially confirmed. There's a Canadian defense memo that was put out, basically investigating UFOs at the time, right? And this was in 1940.
UAP, for those that are not informed, unidentified aerial phenomenon.
It's the same thing as UFO. It's just got less stigma attached to it. It's the exact same phenomenon. It's the same thing. The same crafts. So I believe it was 1949 when Project Grudge was first starting.
Tell us a little bit about Project Grudge. I don't know much about that.
Basically, you had Project Sign, Project Grudge, Project Blue Book. Those are the order of UFO, UAP
The
investigations.
progression of it.
Right.
Okay.
So at the very beginning, the first one was Project Sign. It immediately became, and it was like a couple months or maybe within a year, became Project Grudge. And then after that, it became Project Blue Book, which was widely ridiculed and used as a debunking tool. But in those early stages, you had so the head of science and research, his name's Vannevar Bush. Basically, this guy is the head of science and development for the U.S. government, right? And the Canadian memo from the Department of Defense, or their Ministry of Defense, or whatever it is, stated unequivocally that they had confirmed, and this had been confirmed by the U.S. government, that Vannevar Bush had been back engineering this anti-gravity technology, right? And that was 1948, 1949.
So this has been going on for, like you said, 80 years.
Yeah, so some of the top physicists in the world today, their parents were working for Vannevar Bush on the UFO programs.
Is this the same Bush lineage as the president?
No.
Different Bush
I
lineage.
mean,
Okay.
maybe ancillary, but I don't believe it's related.
I
So,
thought we were going to jump in a whole other
no,
rabbit hole here.
that's a whole other episode about Nazis. So,
Yeah. Oh, all right, okay. Ooh.
yeah, I'll call it what it is. But getting back to Tom DeLonge, so in 2016 on Rogan, he was talking about how he was contacted by the CIA. He was brought out and he was put in a skiff and they interrogated him, and then I think he went back to the West Coast and they put him in a hotel for 3 days and then interrogated him every day for 3 days. And finally he was like, look, I think I know what's going on, and I have a way, I think I have a way to educate the public in a way that we can move disclosure forward in a national security
So
advised way.
let's talk about this. What is this?
So this is just a mind map. Basically, I created a connection map of all the major players. So this is To the Stars Academy. That's Tom DeLonge's group. And you can see, if I click it, maybe, everyone that turns blue, those are people who are attached or have worked for or worked with TTSA. So here we have the CIA, Lockheed Skunk Works, Office of Naval Intelligence, Lou Elizondo, Christopher Mellon, Hal Puthoff, Stephen Greer. So the ATIP.
So this brings it out of the world of science fiction and into the government is actively working with To the Stars Academy.
Right. The government set up To the Stars Academy. So they actually, so Lou Elizondo, he's actually the head spokesperson for them. He was the head investigator for ATIP, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. It's the CIA's UFO project, right? Over 2008 to 2013, whatever it was. So Christopher Mellon, Dr. Hal Puthoff, he's currently employed by TTSA. A lot of these different individuals and groups came together, and I bet I can pull it up. So the TTSA board was originally, that's the Texas Towing. Anyway, so the TTSA board was originally founded and comprised by the director of Lockheed Skunk Works. He left his job as the chief engineer of Lockheed Skunk Works to go work for TTSA. Now, can you imagine being, so Lockheed Skunk Works, for you guys who don't know, that is the premier black budget, black ops, creating secret aerospace technologies in the whole world. There's none better, there's none more proclaimed, right?
That's Area 51.
It's Area 51.
All that.
He left his job with them to go over and work at TTSA. We're talking about head people in science and research from the CIA, the DIA. Yeah, I can't actually find it right now.
What is the DIA for those who don't know?
That's the Defense Intelligence Agency. It's basically the CIA, but for the military.
Okay. There's Tom DeLong right there.
So right here. 25 years as the operations officer for the Central Intelligence Agency, Directorate of Operations. He's the VP, the co-founder and VP of TTSA. Training leadership CIA tradesmen and counter weapons of mass destruction. Recipient of the agency's Career Intelligence Medal.
So these are some pretty accomplished people. These aren't conspiracy theorists or tinfoil hat crazies.
Well, this leads me back to my comments about how he was disregarded during Joe Rogan's podcast, being called crazy. And I said he's either producing the biggest fraud ever, or it's real. The reason I said the biggest fraud ever, it would actually be a legal investment fraud. If these people had left their positions at the CIA, DIA, Lockheed Skunk Works, Hal Puthoff's working at the Institute for Advanced Study Austin, right, to come here and work in a way to convince the public that it was legitimate, right, that is a direct fraud. They could all be in prison for the rest of their life for that.
That's kind of a big deal.
It's a huge deal. So it tells you that either they're protected and they're fraudulent, or it's real.
And I mean, what's to say this isn't a psyop to, make the American public believe that these things are real?
So I'll give you one example.
I mean, I'm playing devil's advocate here. Let's think about this from a perspective. We've always heard the old weather balloon argument. We've shot down a few weather balloons recently. Why is every UFO a weather balloon? Now all of a sudden they're giving it legitimacy by some pretty famous people being in this stuff.
I don't think it's giving legitimacy. There's no public recognition of this group, right? I mean, this isn't something you hear about on the news like it's Twitter.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? This company has a multi-billion-dollar back engineering contract for to back engineer metamaterials, quote, not from this earth. I mean, that's a government contract.
That's pretty wild.
So
not of this earth. So I can't help but think, Roswell. There was some crazy materials supposedly found.
Right.
By some of these farmers and locals. Metal with memory. We know that that's a fact. That's something that exists now in the world.
Didn't exist then.
Didn't exist then. So, what is the deal with these Chinese spy balloons that they let just kind of go over the whole country? What's your thoughts on that?
So there's actually two answers to that. I think the one that went across the whole country, obviously, it was just a balloon with the payload suspended that was surveilling. My intuition with that is it was literally the U.S. government. I mean, they could have shot it down over the Pacific Ocean before they ever reached us.
Sure.
My guess is they wanted to test their electronic warfare capabilities. Say Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, they're developing these systems to try and beat other people's systems. And I think they probably knew that there was nothing substantial that that balloon could have gotten that could have been gotten from outer space. And so instead they used it as an opportunity to test their own defense systems, if that makes sense.
That makes sense to me.
Can we, not only can we scramble that, but can we embed nonsense information in that? Can we basically, how much can we trick their systems?
Some counterintelligence.
Exactly, just counterintelligence.
So, from my understanding, we shot down the one just off the coast of the Carolinas.
Right, that was the one balloon in my opinion.
So, you don't think the other two are balloons?
No, excuse me, no
And
way.
by the other two, you mean the one shot down over Prudhoe Bay and the one shot over the Yukon territories?
Right. In my opinion, those were probably other countries' UAPs, right? So we have the technology, we have the patent on the technology. We got the patent on the technology awarded because we could prove that other countries had the technology too, right? I believe that the most likely measure was these were probative UAP, say Chinese or Russian, probably Chinese, tests to see how we would respond. And we shot them down, and nobody in the intelligence or deep military community wanted it known that either country had this, right? Because the assumption is we have the patent on it, but we don't actually have the technology, right? And we have the patent on it, but they don't have the technology. Now, something that Tom DeLonge and To the Stars Academy disclose in all of their books is there's a secret war, and that these UAPs are actually commonly used in war, like illegal war between us and Russia and China, right?
And that's something that I think has been going on for a long time now is,
Right.
DDoS attacks from China on all sorts of American businesses, government stuff. That's a known thing that's been happening for the past 10, 15 years at least.
Right.
I got a brother that works in the computer sector of the world, specifically in anti
Right. That
attacks.
that sort of thing.
So I have a little bit of insight knowledge with that sort of deal. Now, from my understanding, there was no pictures or video of the two that were shot down in northern Canada and northern Alaska.
Right.
And supposedly they shot it down. I believe they shot it down with a F-22 and with a Sidewinder missiles.
Right.
Those are pretty expensive.
It's like $500,000 per shot.
Yeah, so I don't believe necessarily that was. You're not going to shoot something down with a $500,000 missile if you're wanting to recover some stuff. So I think that they did shoot it down. I've been on the North Slope a lot. And the North Slope, if you don't know, is the oil fields in Alaska, the northern coast of Alaska. Massive oil fields up there. It is a sea of white. If you were to shoot anything down in a sea of white, it's going to stick out like a sore thumb.
Right.
And they sent, I have lots of friends and coworkers and people that I know that work on the slope, and they saw helicopters and all kinds of recovery equipment out there.
Right.
Nothing was recovered, and that sounds a lot to me like a sort of a Roswell cover up. Come on, like it's a sea of white. You can't spot a black dot in a sea of white. Like,
Right.
Come on. And it wasn't crazy whiteout conditions or anything. It was bluebird skies.
Right.
So kind of a conspiracy theorist type of thing going on up there, but we don't necessarily know what it was, and I don't know if the government even knows necessarily exactly what it was. But that was the reason they shot it down. They want to know what it is.
So most people don't realize this, but I don't actually remember the number. But there's something like 1,400 weather balloons that are released all over the world every single day, right? So they send them up, and they're used for your purposes. They're used to track the winds everywhere, so that way we can create integrated models of the entire world's wind system.
The app Windy, for instance, it literally is that. It's just wind speeds and temperatures and all that kind of good aviation type stuff,
right,
in one place.
Could it have been some weather balloon that a kid sent up? Sure, it could have been.
Could it have been a hobbyist drone? Maybe.
Unlikely.
that's the story they're trying to feed us. I've heard that from multiple people.
Right. I don't know. I couldn't imagine being a fighter pilot and being sent out. And you're talking about trained observers. So I was a trained observer in the military. We went through dozens of hours of aerial vehicle ID, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you see a vehicle on the horizon, and it's your job to immediately be able to know shoot or don't shoot, right? Shoot or don't shoot. I mean, that's what we're taught, shoot or don't shoot. Is it friendly or is it not? And if it's not, where's it from? And these pilots were flying within meters of this thing. I mean, dozens of meters, but within meters of this thing, and couldn't identify it, and yet shot it down, and then it turns out it's a Mylar balloon. My ass.
I don't buy it.
There's no way.
I don't buy it.
There's no way.
The weather balloon it's almost comical at this point.
It's just a kickback to Roswell. It's like what started the whole process.
It's kind of like a little Easter egg for all of us, folks that are interested in these UFOs and types of things. We all know that's bullcrap. It's a made up cover story. Weather balloon is it's
a trope.
It's almost a meme,
Right.
like it's so cliche, and it's like
right.
it's almost like they're giving the nod to the tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists, like, yeah, this is some squirrely stuff.
I'm not gonna lie. I think it was probably a bit. So when they came out and they said we can't rule out that these are extraterrestrial vehicles. Did you hear that?
I did hear that.
Yeah. So then they immediately, the next day, were like, they're weather balloons.
Yeah.
If you're not familiar, in Roswell in the 1950s, there was an incursion. So Roswell, at the time, was the home of the only nuclear weapon capable air squadron in the world. Right?
I did not know that.
Yeah. So the idea that there would be an incursion on that base specifically pretty intense.
Pretty
right?
intense.
It was taken very seriously from the highest level. And the Air Force immediately reported, might be a flying saucer. Like, it seems like a flying saucer.
And they redacted that almost immediately.
Yeah, and then they went back and they said, oh no, it turns out it was actually just a weather balloon. And they sent Jesse Marcel to go in there. And you can see him like awkwardly looking off camera, taking direction, right? And he's the investigator, and he's holding up Mylar. And he's like, yep, this is what it was. But I think that there's a lot more value in destabilizing the conspiracy theorists and making them seem crazy than there is in actual.
I would agree with that, because who are we to try to pretend like we know everything, and how better to hide something than just to say plain sight,
Right.
Oh, that guy's crazy because he believes that was not a weather balloon, and how many of your friends and family think that you're an absolute nut job because you're talking about these things?
Everyone.
And I don't know. I'm not a humongous believer in aliens and everything. I think that we're definitely not the only intelligent life form in the universe, but I don't know that we've been visited by aliens. I think a lot of this technology and these things are black projects that we simply are not privileged enough to know about.
So here's the thing. I would agree with that wholeheartedly. But I honestly believe that. So my conclusion that I actually had to run a Bayesian analysis on who I thought did it. Right? Do I think it's people? Do I think it's extraterrestrials? Do I think it's a global, conspiracy theory based off of?
In my personal opinion, I think it's about a 95% chance this is a man-made craft.
That is exactly the number I put on it. So. It's not that I don't think that some of them are alien. Sure, there's no reason to believe that some of them aren't, but there's every reason to believe that they're people. And even dating back to prehistory, right? So there's cave art drawings. There's the descriptions in Hindu culture of the Vimana, right?
Yeah.
And those, it's not just a description. It literally says put liquid mercury in a bowl, basically heat it up, and it'll start swirling. And as the mercury swirls, it'll distort the effects of space-time. I mean, we're talking about really not the same technologies, but so close they cannot be dismissed. And this is what 4,000 years before flight, and the people who believe it claim that those texts are actually date back tens of thousands of years.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of cultures all over the world that, you know, they talk about beings from the sky, whether they be gods or you know, teachers. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of parallels there. That, you know, if you're really interested in this type of stuff, it's not just ancient aliens. It's kind of comical what they put together.
Right, they put the guy with crazy hair.
Yeah, you know, aliens. Ancient astronaut theories suggest, you know.
Right, exactly.
Come on now, but there is a lot of weird stuff that there's a lot of cultures around the world that have very similar parallels in their stories, their lore, their histories. And I think that, you know, there's a lot of weird stuff that we just don't know about. And I think a lot of it could be drawn up to, you know, these UAPs are a thing that's been going on for a very long time. And you can't dismiss that fact. There's a extreme amount of very well respected pilots who have seen things that they just cannot explain.
Right.
And they're like, I'm not a crazy person. I've seen this with my own eyes.
Well, they just released it.
There's videos.
It's government verified.
Yeah.
There's U.S.
That's
Navy
what I'm
pilots
talking about.
that took video of Tic Tac fly. I think their words were Tic Tac shaped object that flies at a totally unpredictable, you know, speeds and changes of direction, like you were talking about with the.
And it's not hot.
It's not hot.
It was like 1 degree colder
It's
than
not
the
on.
environment.
Yeah, it's
No
not on the
exhaust.
FLIR. It has no known propulsion system, which is.
It what?
Makes no sense on if you're thinking of an internal combustion engine, a jet engine, any sort of known propulsion
It creates
puts
heat.
off heat.
Right.
And these objects they're photographed, they're videoed of no heat signature,
Right. There's a bubble.
erratic
There's a
movements. These are real things that we've seen on video that is government video taken by U.S. naval pilots over the Atlantic Ocean, over the Pacific Ocean. They're all over the place. Hundreds of reports.
So I'm going to read this real quick.
Okay.
So, faster than light travel is typically considered impossible. However, that's only because the Higgs field, which acts like molasses against matter, resists the increases to infinity as the speed of the craft approaches the speed of light. This is like shooting a bullet in space versus underwater. And the elimination of the Higgs field interference means that, in theory, the mass energy problem that stops us from being able to attain the speed of light, right? That problem becomes nullified. So relativistically, there's nothing that can attain light speed if it interacts with the Higgs field, right?
Mhm.
So only light can go light speed, or certain other things. But this creates a force field of negative vacuum pressure that encapsulates the craft and creates a sink, right? Which allows for the craft to cut through what's called the Dirac sea, like the sea of fields that we live in, right? That's the Dirac sea.
Right.
It cuts through that like a hydrophobic knife, right?
Okay.
So what that means is
Zero resistance.
zero resistance, which means faster than light travel. Faster than light travel means what? Do you know?
I don't.
Think about have you ever seen the Superman movie where he goes around the Earth backwards?
Yeah.
Right. So the whole premise of that is if you can go faster than light, you can go back in time.
Bend time in space.
Right. So he was trying to bend it. We're talking about break
Break
the dynamics of space time. If you can go faster than light, so say we can go from here to Alpha Centauri faster than the speed of light, and then come back faster than the speed of light, we will arrive, weeks, months, or years before we left.
And that's wild.
That-
That breaks everything that you know instantly.
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 So how does this fit in? We now have a technology that we claim is capable of propelling us faster than the speed of light.
So time travel? Is it?
No.
Is that what you're suggesting?
No. Not only am I suggesting it, the author of the patent said this should be capable of time travel. That is what the U.S. Navy said, right?
So we have a patent on a
On a time travel device.
time travel device.
Yes.
What?
Yeah. So think about what that means. Like going back in time, like we see the Vimanas and we see these phenomenon going back in time as far as we can go back.
Yeah.
All it took was Commander Fravor to hop in one of these things and fly it back in time. And then it's present in our entire timeline.
So-
it seems like something that's always been there, but it could just be an American dude in a spacesuit inside that craft. I mean, every ancient religion that we have could have been seeded by some asshat American who's actually in a fucking flying saucer that we created by Lockheed.
Could you imagine being that random GI
I've read a book about it. It's actually like a passion of mine.
and just inserting some random meme culture into ancient civilization?
Yeah, I could.
Oh, I'm way too much of a joker to take time travel serious. That's we're delving deep into the world right
Yeah.
now. Like
No,
time travel could affect literally every aspect of human culture.
every single one.
Like everybody dreams of, if I were to travel back in time, I'd kill Hitler, or but what's this is such an unexplored space that you've heard of the butterfly effect. You kill a butterfly and all of a sudden
Right.
the world is completely different.
What happens if you kill Montezuma?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
What happens if you see yourself, or like does the world implode? Like what happens? It is such a crazy thing to even think about. And we have patents on this stuff. Like,
Oh yeah, we have patents on this.
man,
So this right
who's
here,
this guy?
this right here is Dr. Gary Nolan,
Uh,
who I've actually spoken with via email. I don't know why I just did that. Just a moment.
technical difficulties.
For some reason, it opened a Vice article instead of opening it. What the hell? It just completely erased my map.
Oh
There we
wow.
go. Oh, never mind. I
Okay.
clicked the wrong thing. I'm drunk. All right, so Gary Nolan, right? He's one of the most prestigious young professors at Stanford. He holds dozens of patents, right?
Yeah.
He's a biologist, and he claims, in many occasions, that in 2012 the CIA and an aerospace company, it's probably Skunkworks, right, showed up and were just like, hey, our intelligence officers, our IC guys, and our pilots are coming down with all of these strange idiopathic diseases that we don't know what's going on.
Oh, I've heard about this.
You did?
I have. I've heard about a few of these things, so I'll let you delve into it,
So I'm gonna actually just quote him real quick.
please. I've heard about this, but I'm nowhere near knowledgeable enough to speak on this.
That ended up bringing me to the attention of some people associated with the CIA and some aeronautics corporations. At the time, they had been investigating a number of cases of pilots who've gotten close to supposed UAPs. They've gotten close to UFOs. And the fields generated by them. And was claimed by the people who showed up at my office unannounced one day. There was enough drama around the Atacama skeleton that I basically decided to forswear all continued involvement in the area, UFOs, aliens. And then these guys showed up and said, we need you to help us out with this because we want you to do a blood analysis, and everybody says you're the best blood analysis, or you have the best blood analysis instrumentation on the planet. They then started showing MRIs of some of the pilots and ground personnel and intelligence agents who had been damaged. The MRIs were clear. You didn't have to be an MD to see that there was a problem. Some of the brains were horribly damaged. And so that's what got me involved.
Okay, so I don't know a lot about this type of thing, but think about radiation. That's waves, right?
Yep.
And how much that can destroy a human body.
It's funny you should say that. So the U.S. Navy's patent, right? Their patent is actually for a microwave-driven device. So basically, they have a device in the middle that emits microwaves that hit the inner cavity wall and drive what's called accelerating frequencies, basically vibrational frequencies and gyroscopic frequencies. So basically, these microwaves transmit out, they hit the inner cavity wall, and then there's an air gap between the inner cavity and the outer cavity. And
Okay.
basically, when it hits the inner cavity, it creates these accelerating frequencies and vibrations that, when they hit the outer cavity, create the negative vacuum pressure.
Wow.
Right? So, the U.S. government's patent
has to do with microwave.
It has to do with microwaving the shit out of people.
So, I'm no doctor. I know a few, but I'm not a doctor. I'm just a guy, a blue collar guy, and I don't know about you, but I don't want to be microwaved.
I don't either.
I imagine that's a lot what he's talking about.
Every single thing that he describes could be, in theory, someone who was exposed to a U.S. government prototype, right? Someone who got accidental exposure during the craft build
Wow.
or construction or flight.
So, radiation poisoning times 1,000?
Not even that. Think about
Is this like
It
a
sounds like you're just literally describing a show I just watched on Netflix.
what show?
what show?
It's called Dark. It's from another country. And the whole thing, it starts out, this little boy is like missing, and this whole show starts out with that, and it ends up going into time travel, space, the God particle, and it's a dark.
The God particle is the Higgs boson. That's what creates the
Yeah,
elastic
yeah.
field.
Well, it ends up going into that, but you don't even hear about it until you're like way deep into like season 3.
So-
but basically,
Probably
what
doesn't
happens
propaganda.
is like
There's a
out
little bit of truth in that.
of
I'm sure.
thin air, a kid's body is like dropped
Yeah.
into from another time,
Yeah.
and they're using these kids to try and break through this time travel, and it's pretty much like microwaving them. Like there's like their ears are blown, their eyes are completely black. It's on Netflix. I watched the whole thing in one
I don't
weekend
know what a
span.
microwave
I'm gonna
does
watch
to a
that.
human body, but it can't be pretty.
It cooks it.
It's
So-
really bad. It's
Yeah.
really graphic, actually.
Well,
So-
I mean that's a TV show, so I mean the
So-
reality is probably 10 times worse.
So Gary Nolan talks about how these people have trajectories of death through their body, where you can have like say through the leg, and then it comes up from the bottom of the leg, through the top of the leg, into the chest, and through the top of the head, and every cell through there is dead.
So
like microwave-
similar
microwave
to like
death.
a lightning strike.
But through radiation that has
Wow.
killed whole he calls it pathways of necrosis.
That's
So, I mean, imagine
That's
being
insane.
shot with a microwave lightning bolt that goes
So,
through your body and it just creates a straight
is
line
this
of death through your
is
body.
this in your opinion not
real-
a
real
human
quick.
safe?
Real quick, I think it was somewhere around a third of his patients died during the study. Like this
Wow.
is no shit stuff.
So in your opinion, like knowing what you know, doing the research that you do, is this safe for human travel? I mean, obviously not, right?
I mean, it's safe for human travel the same way a car is safe for human travel. It's safe until it's not.
Okay, I mean that's fair. So
I mean, it's got to be safe because if every pilot that piloted one of these things and everyone that we see in the sky is a U.S. government craft, then there have to have been thousands and thousands and thousands of pilots. And if all of them died in these mysterious ways instantly, not only would the program end, but there would just be graveyards of dead IC.
So I wonder if how many of these are a unmanned AI type thing, or even a drone type thing where it's being flown by some guy in a Conex box in Nevada.
So I actually wonder that too. The main thing I wonder about is, so if we can create this negative vacuum pressure containment field
Yeah.
around the craft, right? And the quantum waves, say, like you said, the God particle or the God field can't interact with it, then how do you communicate with it? How do you navigate it? How do you fly it, drive it?
Oh wow, yeah, I didn't think about that.
Unless, and this is where I think there's a huge unless, and this is not discussed in the patent, but I do believe this is the case. I believe it's highly likely that field permeability is tunable, right? So we can turn off the Higgs field, but not say the light
To
field.
allow
We can allow
communications.
right certain amount of communications
Well,
through the electromagnetic.
And that would
spectrum.
only make sense because every single aircraft on the planet has to be able to communicate,
right.
or you're kind of screwed because you make a 90-degree turn in zero gravity and 10,000 miles an hour. And now you're slamming into a 747 at 10,000 miles an hour.
So let me get to this. So this craft with an inertial mass reduction system, right? Here's the craziest part. Not only is it alleged to be able to fly through space, it's alleged to be able to fly through air, it's alleged to be able to go from air to water without any resistance, right?
So that's tying into the USOs. Unidentified submersibles.
Right. So basically, if this craft, if the field that it can generate is able to displace the matter around it, right? If it can fly underwater with no resistance, then that means that the water molecules are not interacting with the craft, right?
Right.
Which basically, these are called transmedium craft, and this is what's been confirmed by the CIA, DIA, et al.
So it's essentially creating a bubble, if you will, around the craft, in the water, in the air, that allows for zero resistance.
Right. So if it's able to push water molecules out of the way with zero resistance, what's to say it's not able to push hard molecules like a rock?
So this is going into quantum physics. I mean, I know very little about this subject, but
so the whole thing is developed.
There's
on
more
physics.
Space in between atoms than there are atoms.
Right. This is just turning off the interaction between them.
So you're basically pushing the atoms out of the way, allowing you to move just through negative space.
Right. So
that's wild.
Yeah. So that actually, honestly, reminds me, when I was a kid, right, I was brought in, and this is where it gets a little conspiratorial, probably going to lose some audience here, but as a kid, I was brought in, I was taken out of the gifted and talented class, right, there was a whole class of us, and I was taken out in the second grade, and there was someone who I could only assume was a government agent, right? Showed up, it was a woman,
okay.
black suit, she's wearing like a pencil skirt, black top, white shirt, and she handed me, it was A Wrinkle in Time was the book.
Okay, I know the book.
Have you ever read it or just?
I've read it, yeah.
Okay. So when she handed it to me, she said, this is incredibly important for you to understand. Everything in this book is real. Right?
Okay.
She said it just like that. And she said, I'm going to come back tomorrow and I'm going to test you on the book. So she came back the next day, and when she showed up, I was pissed. And she was like, what's going on? And I was like, you told me everything in this book is real. And if you've read the book, it's the idea that everything in that book is real is pretty outlandish, right?
It's kind of scary.
Right. So she was like, well, what specifically? Like, what's bothering you? And I said, well, you told me everything in this book is real, but in the book it says that you can vibrate at a frequency that matches the resonant frequency of a wall, and you can just walk right through it. And she looked at me completely dead-eyed, and she said, yeah, what's your question?
And
that's
yeah, okay.
I don't take that as fact, but it's definitely a data point.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, right? You got resonant frequencies. Everything resonates at a frequency. Opera singer singing, breaking a glass.
Right.
That is that resonant frequency.
Soldiers
how does that explode?
Soldiers, when they walk across a bridge, they go through what's called route step march, right? So everyone's in lockstep, and then you hit a bridge, route step, march, right? And everyone just walks normal. And the reason we do that is because if the route stepping, or if the actual coordinated stepping matches the resonant frequency of the bridge, the fucking thing will collapse.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, literally, there's cases in World War II where troops were walking in coordination, and the bridge just collapsed because of the vibrations under their feet from like the rhythmic beats.
Vibrations is a hell of a thing. I got an uncle who is kind of an odd guy, great guy, love him to death. He's into drums,
Okay.
and the healing power of drums is something that he believes in fully, and I've drummed with him. You know, I'm not a big hippie or anything like that, but I like drumming. It's fun. It's kind of like you're in touch with your ancestors, if you will.
That's fun.
And he really believes in his heart of hearts that, you know, this is something that
Is healing?
Healing is spiritually, physically. I'm not sure exactly what he believes. I'm not going to speak on it for him, but he thinks there's a benefit there, and I do too. If nothing else, is a meditative state that you can get into.
Absolutely. That was what I was going to be. So whether or not it heals you, I don't know. But I know that there's been hundreds of societies throughout the history of the world who have believed that communal, that communal vibration, such as dance, even just organized dancing, drumming, especially
There's something to it.
It always has to do with drumming.
In almost every culture on the planet is some sort of a musical tradition with drums, and it's just something so primal in us that it's hard to deny that there's something there.
From a psychological standpoint, I would argue that at the least, it puts us in a group flow state. Do you know what a flow state is?
Sure.
So it'll put you in a group flow state, right? And everybody who knows what it is knows that how good flow states are for the body.
Yeah.
Right. It's good for healing. It's good for psychology. It's good for productivity and happiness.
It more or less draws everybody into one thing.
Right.
And I'm not gonna say I'm a believer in alternative medicine through crystals and energy and things like that.
But if you've ever been a part of a drum circle, like
it's
legit
a
drum circle,
powerful thing.
It is.
We were just a couple of guys on the back porch playing some drums we built. My wife, she's super talented. I can't say enough good things about her. She built a moose-hide drum.
God, that's sick.
A Lakota drum.
I built 2.
She built 2. Sorry, correction. She built 2.
Wild Grounds coffee.
And we're playing these drums on my back porch, man. Just rhythm.
Right.
And you start vibing to that, just that beat of the drum. And something about that, moose hide stretched over.
Oh, it can definitely affect your consciousness.
It just kind of puts you in a zone.
Yep.
And there's a thing there, man. You can't deny it. There's a rhythm to the world around you. When you start vibing to a rhythm, it's like working with music, right?
Right.
You're gonna be more productive, just jamming out, working. You kind of get in a zone, if you will. You're getting in a zone. You're just jamming. You're doing work. We've worked together a lot.
Yeah, it's putting you in. It's putting you not only you in a flow state, but a communal flow state where everyone. It's like if a bunch of people all take DMT together and experience the same trip, right?
I've never been there, but
I haven't either. But there's
I've
actually
heard about it.
There's been scientific studies done, and we're talking about psychonauts who go out and all of them come back reporting the same thing, the same experiences, talking to the same people, talking to each other in these altered spaces, and then come back and once vibrationally they're down to their base reality, they all know about it. But it seems just like this fictional concept.
There's some just crazy stuff in this world. Like, I don't know if you know this, but species of coral.
No.
Whether it be in Australia, or it was taken from Australia and put underneath a cabinet in London, they all spawn their seeds or their offspring the exact same time across the globe.
No way.
They communicate somehow, telepathically, vibrationally, somehow, and it's different. It's not the same day, it's not the same month, every single year. It's a specific time that every single coral of that particular species at the exact same time. And there's evidence of this in a lot of different types of plants, and coral is one of the most basic life forms. An animal on the planet. It has no brain, it has no eyes, it has no ears, but it can communicate across the entire planet.
So do you think that means?
I didn't know they have eggs.
Do you think it means has anything to do with consciousness, and maybe consciousness is universal, like a field that everyone?
I do think that hive mind is a real thing.
Oh, 100%.
I think that the human experience is something that if you separated humans out over tremendous distances, more than Earth, we would still remain somewhat equal as far as what we're doing, when we're doing it. You look across the planet, we had
It's Operation Stargate shit.
arguably no communication with ancient Egypt to the Mayans, right?
Right.
Some people say maybe there was some communication. I'm in the camp where I don't believe there was. But they're building similar structures around the same time frame.
I'll do you one better than that. 13,000 years ago, right?
That's a long time
A
ago.
long time ago.
Mammoths still.
Mammoths. So it's the end of the mammoths.
Yeah.
Right. So there's this idea of the global flood.
Yeah.
Right? And in Christian mythology, basically God was disappointed with his creation. They were vain, they were arrogant, they were self-centered and worshiping other deities, basically idols that they had created.
False idols, yeah.
False idols, yeah. So he decided he was going to scour the earth of his original creation to restart the project, right?
Yeah.
Now, that's an interesting story, but when you consider that South America, North America, Central America, the Sumerians, the Indians,
There's physical evidence of a great flood.
China, not only the physical evidence, but doesn't matter what remote part of the globe. You can go to New Zealand, right? And they have the myth that Earth had been plagued by
A global flood.
Well, I was going to say that the people needed to be scoured from the earth
Yeah.
because God was unhappy with them,
Yeah.
right? The idea that everyone would have a global flood myth, sure, you could argue that, there's floods everywhere, so everyone's going to have a flood myth, right? That's a
It was
universality.
around the same time.
But the fact that everyone put it at the same time, and that at the same time we had known events, and while those known events were happening, every single known civilization said the same story, that we were basically being punished by God for being evil, and that he needed to cleanse the earth of us.
So is that hive mind, or is that evidence of like a telepathic communication between cultures?
It could be telepathic communication or hive mind, which I believe is pretty much the same thing in some ways. Or it could be true. But either way, the fact is, we all said the same stuff. Doesn't matter where you go in the world. It doesn't matter if you're at the top of the Andes or at the pyramids, right? It's all, everybody's saying the same thing. And
It's kind of wild, though.
It happens to coincide with a direct real event that we know happened, right?
Oh,
The end of the Younger Dryas, the mass extinction events.
There's tons of physical evidence of a massive flood on a global scale. You look at the Americas, all across the United States, there is scars in
Right.
the earth of there was a gigantic amount of water flowing
Oh yeah.
at one point in time, and there's no denying that. Like, you look at the ripples in the landscape, and it's the same as a ripples on a beach.
But it's 50 feet high.
Yeah, it's an insane amount of water that was moving. And now, was that the ice caps melting? Was that a global warming? Probably.
Right.
The ice age ending, and all of a sudden the world heats up back again. The world, we know for a fact the world goes through cycles of heat and cold, heat and cold, heat and cold.
Yeah, but what are the odds that everyone's going to tell the exact same story?
It's kind of wild, man.
Almost impossible.
So I think there's definitely some there's proof among funguses, mushrooms, plants, animals, all these wild, how does a moose know that it's time to rut? Every single year at the exact same time.
How is it that an orca will swim across the ocean and eat a moose? I don't know if you know this, but orcas hunt moose.
Oh yeah.
So an orca will hunt a moose, they'll hunt a seal, they'll hunt a sea lion, they'll hunt a penguin.
They'll hunt whales.
They'll hunt whales and sharks, but they will not hunt people.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Why is that? And then, okay, let's we're delving pretty deep into this.
Honestly, I think we should lead this in and probably cover stuff like Project Stargate next.
Some
next
astral
episode.
projection type stuff. Yeah, I agree.
Some decentralized consciousness studies, but
It's insane how many examples we have of,
Just
why
the
does
universe
a duck know to fly south for this winter? Why does a salmon come up the stream and spawn in the exact location it was born?
right. You want to tell me a goldfish has no memory, but a salmon remembers the rock it was born by? I mean,
Pretty wild stuff.
it's pretty wild.
So that'll lead us into next week's topic. We're going to talk about some just kind of wild stuff out there. If you like what you've seen and heard here, give us a like, give us a follow.
Don't
Give
forget
us
to
a
subscribe.
Subscribe, man. It doesn't cost you a dime. Hit that freaking little bell. YouTube sometimes unsubscribes people, so make sure you're still subscribed.
Especially the kind of stuff we're talking about, it's probably going to get buried by the algorithm.
Yeah.
So
We're talking about some kind of weird, controversial stuff. So if you like what you're hearing, tune in next week. We're going to have some other just kind of wild stuff. I'm going to try to get a hold of my uncle on this one. It's going to be a wild podcast. So
also, don't forget to go check out Wild Grounds Coffee and go ahead and place your order now. We're taking pre-orders at the moment. So
yeah, we're really excited about this. We're gonna try to get coffee out to the masses. Our biggest goal at Wild Grounds is not about money. We're not trying to be millionaires here. We're just trying to give back to Wild Grounds, wild public spaces, public access. We're a family of hunters, fishermen, outdoorsmen. Zach and his family love the hunting and fishing, camping lifestyle. All of us Alaskans do. That's what we're about. If you want to go on cool fishing trips, you want to go on cool hunting trips, we're giving them away. Come on, check out our website. We're going to be launching real soon. We're going to take pre-orders on coffee. It's some good stuff.
absolutely.
Well,
Not only is it good stuff, but it's damn good coffee.
it's good coffee.
It's Alaska grown and Alaska, roasted. It's amazing stuff.
It is. It's some good local guys, family. My family to yours, direct to your door. Pick it up in your mailbox. Enjoy a nice cup of coffee. There's nothing better, really. So if you guys like what you're hearing, come on, give us a like, give us a share, give us a subscribe,
And cheers.
and we're out. Renegade Podcast. Out.